Hello, this is Julie with a short note before a special episode that I'm bringing to you, care of my friend and Mother's Quest member, Sneha Job, whose show Shift to Prosperity on YouTube became an opportunity for me to reflect on an important chapter in my life, creating and launching my first book, The Mother's Quest Inspiration Guide. Mother's Quest Inspiration Guide Volume 1 Engage officially launched on Sunday with a book signing at my favorite local bookstore, Reach and Teach, and a reception at our home afterward. The experience itself was what I call an epic snapshot moment from start to finish. My son Ryan introduced me with humor and heart. My husband Chris took video and remembered to bring pens for signing. Jacob sat right next to me and continued to tap my shoulder throughout the reading and Q&A to tell me all kinds of things. And I got to look out at a lovely gathering of friends and Mother's Quest members who asked thoughtful questions that helped me make meaning of my experience. Special thanks to my friend Remee Vargas, who helped me with the book throughout the process and also came to take photos. An especially sweet moment was the chance to showcase the books of other Mother's Quest members who created tiny books, and to share the event with two of those authors, Jenjii Hysten and Heather Anderson. Leslie Tagorda, Lena Velasquez, and Cameron Miranda were all there in spirit. I'm so grateful to Alexandra Franzen and Lindsey Smith of the Tiny Book Course for guiding me to becoming an author with ease and joy. I'm grateful for every podcast guest, guide, and community member who has enriched my life on this epic journey the last 5 years, and whose wisdom is infused in the pages. And I'm grateful to my family for inspiring me every day to become the fullest version of myself. Hope this moment of gratitude and the interview with Sneha ahead might be a nudge for you to say yes to a dream of your own or invest in yourself in some way. If a dream inside you is to become an author like it was for me, the Tiny Book Course sets sail again in September, and registration closes this Friday, August 20th. I'll be working on Volume 2 of the Mother's Quest Inspiration Guide series and maybe a children's book with my kids, and would love to create and celebrate alongside you. I'm an affiliate partner for the Tiny Book Course, and if you use the code Mother's Quest at checkout, you'll get $50 off, and $50 will go to support the work of Mother's Quest. I'll also be offering a special reflection circle for all the Mother's Quest members that have said yes to this experience, so we can share our ideas, give one another feedback, and cheer each other on. Follow the links in the show notes to learn more and sign up, and feel free to reach out for more information or any of your questions answered. I am filled with gratitude, especially as so much in our world is challenging. It's powerful to celebrate the goodness in front of us and the responsibility and possibility to make an impact. I hope this tiny book and the conversation that you're about to listen to has big ripples. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to 2 high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I?
Thank you so much for being here with us, Julie. It has been an honor to know you, and thank you so much for your inspiring work and all the inspiration you provide to all the mothers out there.
Sneha, thank you so much for having me in this conversation and for all the inspiring work you do in the world and that you put out there, and for being part of the Mother's Quest community. It's such a joy to know you, truly.
Thank you. I think I came to know about your community through Christine Downs. It has been really great. It has helped me to sort of start looking intentionally into my life as a mother and figure out what about my life is epic or how I want to make it epic. And to start with, since I'm talking about epic, I would love my audience to know what I mean by living your epic life. So can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So epic has two important connotations. The first is this idea that we are the authors of our own stories and that we write our stories of our life. And the inspiration for that came from me actually hearing Elizabeth Gilbert talk about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and also the work of Jonathan Fields from the Good Life Project, who talks about the hero's journey sometimes too, and a lot about the quest that we're all on. And I felt like as a mom, it can be so easy to lose ourselves in motherhood and forget that we're not only trying to help our children to reach their fullest potential and achieve their dreams, but that we have our own lives to live and our own dreams to fulfill. And I also realized that our kids learn so much more from what they observe in us than what we tell them. And that if I could step into more fully living an epic life, the kind that is like for the storybooks, filled with the stories I would want to maybe tell my grandchildren someday, that I would really be modeling for them how they can do that for themselves. So that's the first meaning, is really in the sort of grandest sense. And then EPIC is also an acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I think help us to live that life when we're raising our kids. And E stands for engaged, mindfully with our kids. P is about pursuing our passionate and purposeful impact that we are here to make beyond our family. I stands for invested in yourself. And then C is connected to a strong support network so that we're in community on our journey and we don't feel like we have to do it alone.
That's awesome. I think the whole acronym is epic. Like, it's really great and it is wonderfully woven together. Does that come naturally to you, or has it taken years of practice to weave words together?
Ooh, I love that question. So it's interesting. I tell the story about how I came up with the EPIC framework in my introductory episode on the podcast. And then also I just self-published my first book. Oh, you have it in your hand.
I don't want to lose it.
That's so exciting. I can see it. And I tell the story in the book too. So if anybody wants to kind of go even deeper, we can link to those sources for them. But I really feel like this idea was brewing for me probably from even before I became a mom, because with both children, I had years of infertility. And so I had that feeling of like motherhood being this thing I was striving for and that was becoming all consuming in many ways. And when I finally decided yes to this vision I had for creating a community and a podcast and coaching programs for moms, I had to then try to articulate, well, what am I inviting people to? And I actually participated in something called Manifesto Code with Jonathan Fields during the time that he was writing his book. And the whole purpose of it was to help us write our own manifestos. And in that process, I had to keep like excavating my thinking of like, what am I really going for here? And so I do tell the story in my intro episode of the podcast where I was in a back and forth with one of the members of their team who was like, I think you're saying you want moms to live a more balanced life. And then I remember like kind of pounding on the keyboard, like kind of frustrated. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's not just about a more balanced life. It really is about living like your most epic life, the kind that you would really want to live in, the stories you want to tell your grandkids. And so that night when the word epic came to me, it was really late because I'm a night owl. I was probably up past midnight. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table with a napkin and a pen and thinking, okay, but epic, that doesn't capture everything I've been on a quest for and that this is really about. Let me see if an acronym could work. And I literally wrote E.P.I.C on the napkin and it came right out. That was also after months of being in this process and a decade of motherhood. So what I would say is that I feel like I've always loved words, and I feel like in different ways, I've always been a communicator, and I've had my own journey with that as well, where I used to feel like, oh, I can only write well, but I can't speak well. And I was afraid to talk in settings. And I kind of got over that. But I think that sometimes the words don't come to you in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So in this particular case, those words seemingly flowed immediately for me, but the truth was they were being constructed in my reflections for years.
I would say it was kind of a synchronicity for you. Would you say that?
Yes. Synchronicity is one of my favorite words, speaking of word weaving.
It is one of mine too. If you have read my book, I have my third step is about following synchronicity. So I was like, oh, we have this big thing in common. So we should talk about it. So how did you start following synchronicities? Like, was it something that you were taught to do as a child? Or did like things start happening and then you read more about it? Or how did it come to your life?
It's so interesting. I mean, I think that the term synchronicity and really paying attention to it in my life is something that has happened more recently, like in my adult years, and certainly since I launched Mother's Quest. So there's so many stories of synchronicity connected to Mother's Quest. So there's the day that these two birds got trapped in my house, happened to be the day that I looked at Facebook and it reminded me that it had been a year since I did this Mother's Quest pilot workshop. And I was feeling the sense of disappointment and feeling trapped within myself. And then 2 seconds later, I heard a crashing noise and these birds were trapped in my house. So there's a story of synchronicity I share in my book about how I made a declaration after the Charlottesville rally that I was going to step into doing anti-racism work. And I happened to be in Santa Barbara celebrating my anniversary with my husband at that time. And instead of going out with him to do what we were doing, I stayed in and typed out this post. That happened to be the anniversary of the death of a dear friend of mine. And I wrote the Mother's Quest mantra in honor of her. And it turned out less than a year later, I was back at that exact same location in Santa Barbara, invited to speak on a panel about the anti-racism work I had been doing. And it wasn't until after the conference and I was driving home that I realized, oh my God, I was in the same location when I declared I was going to do this work. And now here I am having this full circle moment of seeing how when I stepped into that work, I might have something of value to offer other people. So those things happen to me now all the time. And I feel like there's something about paying attention because I think any of these synchronicities could just kind of pass me by if I wasn't slowing down and noticing and then stopping to make the meaning of it. And I think some of that comes from my dad. My episode with him on the podcast is one that I highlight in the book. And he always believed that we pursue our fate. He has the story of where he saw an ad for a job in Los Angeles. He lived in New York and he walked into the elevator door to go home and thought, oh, maybe I should go type out the resume and send this in. I've always wanted to live in Los Angeles. And in that moment in the elevator, if he hadn't thought to get back out, our lives would be completely different. And it was because he paid attention to intuition inside. So I think synchronicity is partially listening to your inner voice and connecting inside. And it's partially paying attention to everything that's outside of you and being willing to stop and slow down and make meaning of it.
Yep. Underline being willing, right?
Yeah. In fact, the day with the birds, sometimes I think maybe the universe has to tell you twice because I figured out I needed to open the door and the bird would fly out. And the first bird flew out. And I thought for a moment, oh, this seems like a metaphor for me. And I think I really would have gone through my rest of my day. I don't think we'd be talking here today. None of the things with Mother's Quest would have unfolded if not there was a second bird that was trapped. When that second bird left, at that point, I was like, okay, all right, I get it. There's something here. And I did what I do a lot of times. I sat down and started writing again, which for me is a way of sorting through my thinking and my feeling and making a commitment to myself.
At what point, since you brought up writing, at what point did you decide to make this E.P.I.C into E.P.I.C program or system of the way how you present your information or what you want to teach with other people into a book?
So I think that being an author and having a book is one of those things that was just like a childhood dream. I probably always, if I could kind of tap deep within, that was something I would aspire to, but probably thought, what would I ever have to say?
There's so much to learn from you. So.
Oh, thank you. When I recorded the opening for my podcast, which is now almost 5 years ago, you have to do that little opening where you say who you are. And I chose to say I'm a writer. I said I'm a community builder, coach, whatever the things were that I felt. And that particular word felt like a stretch. I also felt like it was important to like put it into the universe in terms of like who I'm becoming. And my teenager, who's now 17, he is continually holding a mirror for me to myself and also continuing to challenge me. And he could kind of be a jerk sometimes. So for a while, he would make fun of me because he'd be like, Mom, if you're a writer, you need to do more than write Facebook posts. And there was part of me that wanted to give him the middle finger. And part of me that was like, hey, you are calling me into a bigger version of myself. And so then he challenged me the year of the pandemic. He was like, Mom, I just challenged you to write a book before the year's over, which was kind of an audacious challenge. But because I'm always looking for the signs and the invitations, not that long after, I saw information about something called the Tiny Book Course that Alexandra, Franzen, and Lindsey Smith offer. And it just immediately called to me. You know, this idea that, first of all, you don't have to wait for a publisher. You don't need an advance. You don't have to write a book that feels overwhelming. Their whole thing is like you go from idea to published book in 45 days with their guidance and in community. And so I was like, 45 days, a tiny book. Like, okay, I can do that. And I can absolutely do it when I have guides and when I'm in community. And so I just said yes. My life is an ongoing process of figuring out what I want to say yes to. And I ended up doing it. But the amazing thing about the Mother's Quest community is that whenever I say yes to anything, I always invite people to come along. And so there were 5 other members of the Mother's Quest community that said, we want to write a book too. And they all signed up for the Tiny Book Course with me. I offered a reflection circle so that we could all come together early on in the process and share what our book dreams were and give each other feedback and champion one another, which is one of the things I think I do best in terms of building community and a space for reflection. And every single one of us published our book. So we had 100% completion rate. And the books were like special and amazing and important all in their own ways. In fact, so I'm holding one that is like such an amazing example for me. This book is called Beyond the Hashtag. It's by Jenjii Hysten, who's a dear friend and a podcast guest. She is actually the person who inspired me to say yes to anti-racism work because she shared this very tearful Facebook Live one day after the death of another Black man by a police officer about how she fears for the safety of her Black husband and her Black boys and her Black brother every day when they walk out the door. And I didn't feel like I could scroll on by that. And I called her. And then ultimately that conversation we had together started a lot of other things unfolding. After George Floyd was killed, her niece came into her one day and said, why don't people love Black men? How do they not see what we see? And Jenjii decided that this was the book she should write. So it's filled with love letters that she's written to the Black men in her life, that they are full human beings beyond a hashtag, deserving of love. And I think that's the kind of book that can change the world, even in tiny ways at first. I personally think that everybody should get this book and it should be widely known, and it probably will get to that point, but it's not yet. But I guarantee you, every person that's picked up the book has been moved and their heart has been shifted in some way from what she wrote. And if I hadn't said yes, then maybe she wouldn't have created that work. And truthfully, if my son hadn't challenged me, I wouldn't have said yes. Which gets me to the theme of this first volume, which is about engaging mindfully with our kids. Just my belief that we are in this reciprocal relationship with our kids. That yes, we have things to teach them and to inspire them, but they also have things to teach us and to inspire us by.
That is so true. I have 2 boys. One is almost 10 and one is 7. And I feel that they are mirrors sometimes where they can show you your dark sides and help you to become a better person every single day. And that's a huge teaching moment. Like we always growing up thought that we are learning from parents, but as we become parents, we start learning from our children. And that's a whole different way to.
Yes, I love that. Is there anything come to mind as a recent example of where one of your children taught you something or challenged you in some way?
But they have been challenging every single day, but I have to think about it. And for a perfect example, I don't have one right now, but I'll come back to it and post it.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe before we're done, even something will come to you.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's what you need to start looking out for.
Maybe
we can kind of plant those seeds of what are the things we want to pay attention to.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about engaging mindfully with children. Why did you think this is one of the major things that we should do as parents? Or why is it your first step towards whatever that we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think some of this comes from my youth development background. So before I was a mom, I worked for 15 years in youth development community building. And I was at the intersection basically of helping young people grow, but helping them also contribute to their community and believing that they have so much to give, not just when they become adults, that they are actually powerful human beings as they're developing. Yeah. So I think in my life's work had this awareness and commitment about the power of young people. And the organization where I worked was also very committed to this idea that if the adults wanted to be growing certain things in young people, we had to be doing that work ourselves. And that's where we had this process called adult reflection, which I became a facilitator for. And that's why I became a coach, was because of that commitment. So I think that idea that even our own growth and development is inextricably tied, I think, to the young people in our life has just been part of my journey. And obviously, as a mother, I think the EPIC guideposts are important because I think they speak to the fact that we are whole human beings. Graham Seabrook, another podcast guest, talks about that all the time. But because my focus is about motherhood as the vehicle for transformation, I think it starts with our relationship with our kids. So that just seemed like the natural place where so many moms are caring about how am I showing up as a mom? And I think that it naturally leads to the next guidepost about passionate and purposeful impact again, because I think our kids do inspire us to step more fully into ourselves. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. So are you planning to put out the series in a certain timeline? You have everything written, or how are you handling that part?
Yeah, so the first book is the first volume. So for the E, Engaging Mindfully. And then the idea is that I would do these tiny books for each guidepost. I am signed up. The tiny book course is setting sail again in September. And if you or anybody listening wants to be part of that cohort with us, I'll be doing the same thing in terms of holding space for us. And I'm really excited about it. So I'll have some accountability and structure and support to do the next volume. I have not kind of laid out the rest of the timeline. I know what my next step is to get that passionate and purposeful impact volume finished. Originally, my tiny book was going to do all the guideposts, and then it felt not like a tiny book and it could take me a lot longer. And my amazing executive functioning coach, Jessica Stong, was the way your brain works. Be really helpful if you could break it out and have accountability for the different pieces. And why don't you just do a volume 1? And that made so much sense. And that made it possible to do it in my timeline. So I know I will get it done. And then my hope eventually is that they all come together in one book. But this is kind of a fun way to bring it forward. I'm also thinking about doing a children's book this fall, if I can do both. I would love to involve my kids who are both differently wired. I'm differently wired as well. I got my diagnosis of ADHD in this last year. And we're all on a quest to figure out how to more fully embrace who we are And even with the things that are challenging, not feel like we're broken and figure out how to lean into our strengths. So I'd love to put that into a book that we could share with our children.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that book.
Thank you. I hope it will come to be. I do trust if it's the right thing, it will unfold because I'll be paying attention to all the signs.
You have a friend that you dedicate this book to, the first volume. Can you share a little bit about her?
Yeah. So I mentioned that the day after the Charlottesville rally was the anniversary of the death of my friend, Leslie Rabinowitz Fisher. She and I were childhood friends from the age of 5.
Wow.
So we grew up together. We went to camp together. My junior year, I studied in Florence and she was my roommate. And then when we were adults, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And that's one of the most horrible cancers one can get. Prognosis is not very good. But what inspired me about her is she completely outlived any of whatever the doctor said they thought would be possible. She lived longer. I think she lived 3 years with it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like she lived a more epic life as she was battling cancer. She took up yoga. She has 2 kids of her own and she showed up fully for them. She got involved in fundraising for pancreatic cancer and participated in walks. Her heart was so open. Anytime you were with her, she was telling you how much she loved you and how appreciative she was. And so I just felt her presence. She passed away around the time that I was creating Mother's Quest. Mm-hmm. And she inspired the Mother's Quest mantra that I share at the end of every episode. So it just felt as I was writing the book that it was important to keep her presence and her inspiration at the forefront.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yes, thanks for asking.
Talking about stories, and since we are writing books here together separately in a lot of ways, what do you think makes a good story?
Ooh, what a good question. Well, the hero's journey says that the story begins when there's a call, when you receive the call. So I think I believe in that there's a good story has a protagonist, somebody you can cheer for, and there's something inside them that's propelling them forward into whatever their story is. So I think that's a key part. I think there's the unfolding. So I think what makes a great story is the characters and the experiences and the things that person you're cheering for is moving through. And when they're vulnerable and honest about what they're going through, then you can see yourselves in them. And then I think successes and celebrations and kind of reaching a pinnacle of some sort, even if they have to move through challenge, can be really powerful also for helping us see what's possible. And I guess where I kind of differ from the hero's journey very much is like, oh, you have to be in a dark cave and it has to be terrible. And I don't think a story has to have that level of danger necessarily. But I think being able to celebrate something at the end and then come to some kind of place of a full circle moment. Those are stories that I love. And I love when they're filled with humor and heart and honesty.
Thank you for sharing that.
What do you think makes a good story?
I think what makes a good story is, I think the person telling it and their experiences, and for them to be able to show it in a way where the person reading or hearing can feel that experience.
I agree.
Right? Yeah.
I love that. You have such good questions, Neha.
Oh, thank you. I'm on a quest in my life, and I feel that I have more questions than answers on some days. So I think that's why I ask better questions, I guess.
I think we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways.
So before we say goodbye, would you like to tell us where we can find your book and how can readers reach you on your social media or some other place, and also where to find your book and where to stalk you in a pleasant way?
Absolutely. So let's see. Very easy is go to mothersquest.com and you'll find the website. You'll find all the episodes and extensive show notes for all the episodes. My virtual assistant and I just put a page on the website for the book. And actually, my son, Ryan, there's a video of him opening up the box when we first received the book and his reflections of, what is this like for you, Ryan, to see that I did it, the thing that you challenged me to. So that's really cool. You could go see that there if you go to mothersquest.com/inspiration guide or the book tab on the website. I would love for any moms that if you feel like you're on a quest of your own and want to be in community, come on over to the Mother's Quest Facebook group. It's a free community. It's filled with the most amazing, inspiring mothers. And we have a regular connection thread where you can share what you're offering or what you're looking for. So we welcome you there. On Instagram, I'm at Mother's Quest Pod. I also have a business page on Facebook, Mother's Quest. And you can always email me, Julie at Mother's Quest. So I'm a connector and a community builder. And if you want to work with me as a coach, I would love to have you and move you through my Spark Your Epic Life series. But if you just have a need or something that you're looking for, reach out because I would love to figure out who can help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for inspiring us today, Julie. Do you have any last words for us or your mantra for us?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me to do that. Oh, it's really interesting. Okay. One thing I forgot is I want to let anybody know that if you're feeling called to write your book, the epiphany I had when we were all sharing about our books is that this was another example of me opening a door for myself, that I wasn't waiting for permission from somebody else. I was the one that said yes, ultimately. And so if you're feeling called to say yes to being an author and the idea of a tiny book feels exciting to you, to please reach out because registration for that closes August 20th. And it would be awesome to welcome you into that cohort. So that's number one, last thought that was on my mind. Two, my teenager started his last year of his public education here. He's a senior. And last night, as we were kind of being reflective before he went to bed, we were thinking about a bit of a mantra that came to him. And over the summer, he came to this words, be yourself, find your people. And so we were reflecting on that. It's so deep. It's so deep. I'll say a little bit more about it. He was saying that he feels like he needs to be himself in order to find his people. And at first, he felt like it was something that once he's himself, he can put himself out there. And last night, as we were reflecting on this, he was like, I think it's actually more about me being grounded. If I'm myself, people will come to me. They'll also find me. After he said his words, he was like, what were your words again, Mom? So it's just really fresh because we were talking about it last night. And I said, it's seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts.
Wow. That is deep. And thank you so much. That puts me into tears when I heard your son's words and now. So thank you so much for sharing so much wonderfulness with us.
Thank you for this opportunity to do what I love most, which is to reflect on the things that matter and to do it in community. This is an amazing way to spend my mornings. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this special episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. Please look to the show notes to follow Sneha Job and her YouTube series for other inspiring conversations. And if you'd like to purchase a copy of the Mother's Quest Inspiration Guide for yourself, visit mothersquest.com/inspiration guide for more information. I want to leave you with the Mother's Quest mantra. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.